Ladies and gentlemen, we, people of color, daughters and sons of immigrants, we belong to Europe. I am, we are the story of Europe. Welcome to this new episode of We Belong. I'm Yasmin Arirang, and I'm an expert on peace and security at the AU-EU Youth Cooperation Hub. Today, we travel to the UK, in the south of London, to meet an audacious and energetic woman. She was named a few months ago a Forbes 30 under 30 in the field of media and marketing for Europe. And she is a journalist. She works for a company that we all know very well, especially now on confinement. I mean, it became almost my best friend. And it's Netflix. She is an editorial creative manager at Netflix UK. And she will explain us in a few minutes what it means to have this position. But first, let me introduce her to you. So welcome, Gena-mour Barrett.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation at We Belong. We will talk about your story, your work, the TV series that you started, but also diversity in the entertainment industry and feminism. So let's start with a concise way to describe yourself. What is your word for us, Gina?
My word that I live by is, this sounds really silly, I suppose, because it's not my personality, but my work ethic wise is problem solving, which I guess is technically 2 words. But that's what I'll go with.
Amazing, we accept it. And problem solving. And I hope you have also a solution for us. And we're happy to hear from you. You publish many articles. You publish also funny articles and videos. For example, I saw that article for BuzzFeed titled, "I lived according to DJ Khaled's incredible Snapchat for a day."
I forgot that I did that.
I mean,
yes.
It was hilarious. I mean, you literally studied his Snapchat stories. And then you interpreted them. Can you tell more about it?
My time at BuzzFeed was great. They really gave us creative freedom at that time to do things that were kind of silly and lighthearted, but were also fun. And I think I spent so much time on the internet, and this was like a pre-TikTok era. And I'd seen that DJ Khaled was like one of the celebrities that was like really, he just used Snapchat really, really well and kept talking about the keys to living your best life and stuff. And I just thought it was so hilarious. And they were just the most random keys. Like he would just do anything and be like, that's the key to success, like eating breakfast, that's the key. I mean, that is accurate, actually. That is true. It is the key to success, eating breakfast. But I just decided to do it. And I mean, not many people are lucky enough to be able to say that they can go into like their job, they get paid to be like, hey, I saw DJ Khaled doing this on Snapchat. I'm going to take a day out of work to just do all of these things and publish it on your website if you don't mind. And they were like, sure. I've never taken myself too seriously when it comes to writing, and so I've always loved finding the balance between doing more serious stuff and some more lighthearted
Of course,
stuff
and
too.
it works super well on you. And you also have a section on your website called Humour and Satire. Is humour part of your identity, and how do you use it?
That's a really great question. Humour is very, very, very large part of my identity. It's really funny because, and not to get all big picture, but I mean, generally I use humour quite tactically, I'd say. And I think a lot of, I don't know, I know a lot of people that are like this, but you kind of, I fall back on humour sometimes to like help me advance in situations or circumstances that I don't feel like as comfortable in. And so like I really rely on my humour to, like when I'm in job interviews, I always like crack a joke. Or like if I'm in a serious presentation and I'm really nervous, my go-to is to like do something funny, because I just really like making people laugh, but also being in that arena of like people softening through laughter is where I feel my most comfortable. And so I've always been somebody who just really enjoys really good humour, whether it's like highbrow or like just really silly. So yeah, it's really important to me. But the thing about humour writing, which is interesting, is that it's really bloody hard. Like, it is so hard to write good humour. I really envy those that can do it well and do it and like stick at it. But it's something I dip into every now and again.
Yeah, I think it's, an art to find a way to make people laugh.
Yes.
There is humor in your work, sure, but there is also a strong commitment that is part of your identity and of the work that you carry on. How did you build it? What was important in your path when you were younger? And, what made you understand that the work that you want to do has to have a commitment that is more than just laughing, but also sharing important messages?
Yeah. Oh, that is also a very good question. I think it's because I've sort of always thought, I think, and I guess this goes back to the problem solving thing about me, is that tactically I've thought, okay, look, if I use the humour to sort of like get me in the door, like break through that first initial barrier, then I can, once I'm in, then I can start spreading those messages and doing those things. And it's funny because that's kind of what's happened with my career. Is that I started working for BuzzFeed, and I was on a team called Buzz Team at the time in BuzzFeed UK, and we would write like humorous articles that got millions of views and write like lists and all those things. But at the same time, once I was there, I was like, okay, well, I actually want to explore more. I want to also be, as you say, a committed writer and explore other themes. And so that's when I wrote an essay about debt and my experience with that. I wrote about my dad passing away when I was 6 years old, and my experience with that. That's an article called it's called 7 Things No One Tells You About Losing a Parent as a Child. And I literally got a message about it 3 days ago, and I wrote this article in like 2016 or something. And so yeah, I think that, I've always thought, I guess, because I live my life not assuming the worst, I guess, but I don't know if anybody else who's listening has ever lost anyone at a young age, someone important, like a parent, and can relate to this. But from the time that happened, I had 2 quite major losses before the age of like 16. And so from then I was like, okay, I have to be very self-sustaining and do everything in my power, in my career, to have a good career. And whatever way I can get into those doors, I will use, which goes back to the humour, but I have to have the commitment and the drive to sort of drive myself forward, so that if anything does happen, with anyone else in my family or anyone else that I'm close to, I'm able to be sort of independent. And so yeah, I feel like I've answered the question all over the houses, but that's sort of, I guess, how I think about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that you had to grow up quicker than others.
Yes.
Because of these episodes that you went through and this loss. Mm-hmm. And you quickly understood what you wanted to become.
Yes.
And how, and you figured out a way to get out of it. So where did you grow up, in which context, and did you dream to work on media and TV since you were little?
So I grew up, obviously, I grew up in London, born and bred. And then in terms of my growing up, I've been in a single parent household. I'm an only child also, since I was 6 years old, which is when my father passed away. And me and my mum are very, very close. And I don't know if I was, my first dream was actually to be a synchronized swimmer. I have no idea why that was the career that I wanted. But yeah, I originally wanted to be a synchronized swimmer. And then when I was,
It's beautiful.
I know, isn't it so interesting, the dreams you have as a child? It's kind of sad that sometimes that like cute innocence goes away. But yeah, that's what I originally wanted to do. And then further down the line at school, I actually wanted to get into drama. And like acting, because it was my favourite subject, but my teacher was like, you are not going to make... My teachers, I went to a grammar school, which, in the UK is basically, I don't know, just... we could be here forever if I start talking about segregated education, but basically it's, you have to take a test to get in. And that school was very of the mindset of like, look, you either be a lawyer or a doctor, or you go to Oxford or you go to Cambridge, otherwise what is the point? And so I mentioned both journalism because I liked writing and acting, and my teachers were like, don't do that, you'll make no money. So I was like, okay. So I knew that I've always liked writing, but I avoided it for a long time because I was worried about, I don't come from a family. Yeah, I don't come from money. You can't. I remember I did my year abroad in California at Berkeley, and we had to prove we had access to $21,000. And I'm not being bloody funny, but I worked at Pret a Manger at the time, which is like a cafe in London. And it was just me and my mum. And like, I don't come from money is what I'm trying to say. It's hard because I had a very middle class education because I went to this school that, you had to get a test to get in. And so you had access to all these other resources that other people who didn't go to those kind of schools didn't have. But my home growing up was not obviously middle class in that same regard. So yeah, I avoided the writing thing for ages until I got to my third year of university, and it was just clear that I had no other passion except, going into something that allowed for writing, which meant that I inevitably went into journalism. But honestly, my only sort of goal was to have any career that allowed for me to write. And I feel like I've been relatively successful at doing that so far. I would consider myself a writer, and I'm not at the moment, my job at Netflix is not writing specifically, but I'm still a writer, and, I can only be as happy, I'm happy that I did that, and that's what I do.
Definitely. And and I think that, you have this passion since you were little, you want to write. Then, of course, you have been told that maybe you were going to not make money with this, but still it's something that you like, and you turned it into a job, and, you use this passion to strive, because you know that you have no other option than just make it. And so you made it. You choose to become a journalist, and you are a Black woman. So we all know that there is not enough diversity, especially on media and cinema in Europe. How difficult was for you to open those doors, and did you see a change in how difficult it was back for you? I don't know since how much time you're doing this, and today in 2020.
How difficult. Okay, I will be incredibly honest with you. In terms of difficulty, it's been difficult. Yes, but also no. I say that because I think that in this country, in the UK, race is and class go hand in hand, right? So I am a Black woman, but again, going back to the middle class education that I've had, I'm used to being in predominantly white spaces. My class, when I first started, I was the only Black person in my class during school. I went to a university that was, one of the top 10 universities in the UK. So I had that education. And so it put me in an environment in which gatekeepers, who are often, white men who went to Oxbridge, or white people generally, those kind of gatekeepers in media kind of were more comfortable with a version of a Black woman who looked like me than somebody who, didn't go to the kind of school that I went to and didn't go to, and which is not correct in the slightest. It's not right, but I'm just trying to sort of explain the nuance, because I think it would have been a lot harder for me if I hadn't have had that, if I didn't sort of know how to play this weird game that you're sort of taught when you're one of the very few that is entered into these environments, that allows for you to speak the language of those kind of people that are in power, and that and you and again, going back to the humor, you use your humor to make yourself kind of look more, like feel more palatable to people who are not used to seeing Black women in their spaces. And so I feel like it was definitely easier for me because I did have that sort of, I had that experience and I was used to doing that. But I think the difficulty came when, you know, it's really exhausting to be playing up to this version that makes other people feel comfortable. And inevitably, when you find other, like for me specifically, finding other Black women in my industry, there weren't many of us, and even when there were, it was like other people were uncomfortable to see us hanging out together because we obviously needed each other, but you know people never question when a group of white women are hanging out together, but they question when there's a group of like Black people in the corner, like what's happening? Why do they always hang out with each other? And so I don't know if I've seen much of a difference, to be honest. I don't feel like I've been in the industry long enough. I started at BuzzFeed in 2015 and it's 2020 now. So I haven't seen that much of a difference. I hope that I will as I grow in confidence, but I still consider myself quite a fetus when it comes to this big media game. I hope, honestly, in time that media of the Black people specifically that are enticed to come in, I hope that media would be more open to people who don't have to come from grammar schools and posh universities and, you know, don't have to speak in a certain way and things like that. All of those things work to my advantage, but I don't think it should be that way. I really don't.
Definitely. And also the language you mentioned, it's super important in other countries too, especially in France. It's a problem in the sense that people living in certain neighborhoods, which are, you know, suburbs, underprivileged neighborhoods, they speak a different French, you know, or a less, you know, sophisticated French, and they face difficulties then in passing, you know, entry tests for very high universities or other opportunities. So I think it's important also to recognize this barrier and to acknowledge that, yes, you were lucky or you were, you know, in the right place to do the right studies and to achieve, but also you had, I would say, this energy and this, you know, there is something that people of color who dare have is that we, of course, we are a minority. We enter into a room and we are maybe the only person of color in the room, but we own it, and that's super important to own it. And I think you do it. You own it, and and I'm super happy to see this and to see how you started your own series on Netflix. But we will talk about it just in a bit. Before, I would love to understand better the important positions that you cover, which is Editorial Creative Manager. What does it mean? What does this intake, and in what it consists?
Okay, let's think of I'm trying to think of a simple way to... I always have jobs that I could never explain simply. My grandma still doesn't understand. My grandma's never known what I do. So I work in editorial in a department called Editorial and Publishing at Netflix. I actually started as a contractor at Netflix. I was working freelance as a contractor for a year first before I came on full time. And that was in their sort of writer's room, which doesn't mean I write shows. This is a misconception. But I was writing, because I knew the internet so well with my experience with BuzzFeed, I was helping generate content for their social platforms. And so editorial and publishing for Netflix is a whole host of things. But it's largely the creative content that you will see predominantly on the 4 big social platforms, so Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. I, at the moment, look after Instagram, but it's also things like, podcasts. If we have a podcast on Netflix, and it's loads of different things. But yeah, that's that team that I work in, and I my main focus is a lot of that content. So if you ever go on Netflix UK Instagram and like anything that's on there, that, you know, that's me, that's my people. So it's pretty much what I do. Yes,
that's you. That's you. Amazing. We will know now. And you have a show that is called 9 Interview Series. Is it right? Is it well pronounced?
Oh yeah, it's Netflix 9. It's an interview series. Yeah.
Okay. Interview series. You recently interviewed also the sex education actor Nkuti Gatwa, and I love him. So
yes, me too.
He gave his opinions. He gave his opinion on 9 hot topics in this interview. How was meeting him? How was this conversation? Did you enjoy it? And yeah, tell us more about it.
Ooh, where do I even start? Well, I mean, Netflix 9 is really cool. It's one of my favorite things that I get to do at Netflix. I'm really lucky that I got to be able to do it. I guess it's not really a show. I wish I've been asking them to give me a show on Netflix. I'm like, look, give me, the people love me, give it to me. But yeah, it's a series on YouTube, so I guess we can call it a little YouTube show. But that particular interview with Ncuti was awesome. I really love his character on Sex Education. I really love the show in general, and I was really, really excited for that interview. And also, it's just so nice. Going back to diversity in media, it was just really nice to just interview, like be a black interviewer interviewing another, like
Definitely.
Interviewing a black actor, and having that sort of common ground and commonality to be able to speak about things. You know, I mentioned in the interview that there are these things that the character Eric does, things like colloquialisms that the character says, which really ring true when you're like from an Afro-Caribbean heritage. And that's something that you will see, and that nuance you will see if you are a black person, particularly living in the UK, or if you've grown up with immigrant parents from Africa or the Caribbean. And so, yeah, it was just it was awesome. It was really, really cool. And the series in general is just a really great thing to do. And I always wanted to interview lots of different people, and that's one of my favorite things that I got to do at BuzzFeed, so it's nice that I get to revisit that in a different form at Netflix.
Yes, and I think exactly as you said, you are a black woman, you interview another black person, and you're legitimate to speak about, and you feel in a safe space speaking about issues that you might face. So it was really great. Yeah. And which was the interview that you're the most proud of?
I would say I'm probably most proud of the one with Ncuti. Actually, I'm really proud of. I'm also proud of the one with Michael Ward. There's a show called Top Boy. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or seen it. But the actor Michael Ward, who plays Jamie in Top Boy on Netflix, he's just so nice, and he is also he was born in Jamaica, and I'm obviously of Jamaican heritage because my dad and grandparents are Jamaican, and so again it was just like being able to interview people that are like me and who are successful in their arena. And yeah, it was really cool. We had a really great vibe, and it was mentioned a lot in the comments that we really got on well, and I'm really proud of being able to curate that atmosphere and make the people that I interview feel comfortable.
Yes, and I think, as you said, you make them feel comfortable, and we also see more of people from African and Caribbean origins just being part of Netflix series. Do you have the impression that it's evolving somehow?
Yes, generally I do think it is. I would like to say so. I like to be optimistic. I don't think it's perfect. And the UK in general, it's hard because I think as the UK, we kind of UK compares itself to the US a lot, which kind of makes no sense because the US is bloody massive. But in terms of racial diversity on TV, it's when you compare it to the US, for example, and I'm sure it's probably the same in France too, it feels like it's nowhere near. It feels like nothing that we've done will ever compare, because in terms of TV and films, the US is, in comparison to UK, is doing a better job, in my opinion. But I think it's going to get better. I pray so. And I just pray also that we don't keep losing our best POC talent in the UK to America, because what does often happen is that there aren't enough opportunities here. And so they go to America and, fair dues, like go where the opportunities are. But it's just such a shame that, you know, we're not able to like retain them in the UK. So I'm just praying that on British TV in particular, we're able to sort of foster and nurture POC talent a lot more, and obviously, you know, Black talent in particular.
Yeah, I hear your ambition, and you know, I wish we could say the same in other countries in Europe, because in France we don't really see as much diversity on TV as for example we could see in the UK. But yeah, let's stay positive, and I hope we change a bit things, you know, moving a bit the lines. Hopefully we'll see. Hopefully, yes. Also, in your bio, in your website, you mentioned 3 commitments that are race, feminism, and pop culture.
Yes.
How pop culture is for you something important in your commitment, and how do you use it?
Well, it's funny because I feel like pop culture, maybe because I'm consistently just online all the time, I feel like that's something that I do, of those three things, it feels like it's something I'm not as cognizant of taking in, but I'm constantly taking in all the time. Like I spend every day on Twitter reading discourse and arguments and what's happening and these kind of things, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's sort of just like become being really on pop culture and conversations that are happening around TV shows or music or films, or, you know, those kind of conversations is something that comes really, it's just something that naturally I find myself involved in, I guess.
In your commitment for example, you mentioned race, you mentioned feminism, but you also use pop culture. So I think that it's quite evident that you try to foster diversity and speak about race through the interviews. What about feminism? What about, you know, your commitment as a woman? Do you have any specific example you want to share with us, or something that, you know, it's deep important for you? I think also about your childhood and how, you know, a female figure in your life was, you know, important, or even your role as a young woman. Maybe you can talk about this also.
Yeah, of course. I think when it comes to feminism, I mean, they both go hand in hand, both of them, because I mean, I can't be Black without being a woman, and I can't be a woman without being Black, and so they both are in and of each other. When I'm speaking about race, I'm speaking particularly about like being how race affects me as a Black woman. And similarly, when I'm speaking about feminism, I'm not speaking about being a white woman. Like, I'm sure they've got it covered, but I'm speaking about, you know, being a Black woman in the UK, you know. And I would say I'm a Black feminist by way of the way that I've grown up. I mean, I'm really close to my mum, as I mentioned, but I was brought up by women. I was brought up by my mum and my auntie and my grandma. Both, the three of them are extremely strong women. And so a lot of projects that I do are usually around that kind of thing. When I had my podcast, Well Blatchley, with one of my friends, that was a podcast that was specifically to talk about, you know, pop culture actually, but through the lens of Black women. And so it just, I don't even know. It's weird because I just feel like naturally it is my passion, but I don't wake up every day look at the calendar and go, today it's time to be a Black. It just is. I just breathe it. I don't know. It just is what it is. And when I work and when I do things, when I go to panels or do talks, I sort of just, that's what I present. Those are things that I care about the most, and how those things sort of affect each other.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, you know, something that you express through your work and through your you know, speeches, commitment. And as a woman of color, I think, or it's, you know, almost evident, almost, you know, compulsory to do so, because after all, the difficulties that you go through as an intersectional, you know, an intersection of race, woman, and class, it's super important to carry these topics.
Definitely.
Definitely. ask you a last question that is super important for me and for us.
Okay.
Which is that, you're English. We're talking about belonging. We are talking about the new daughters of Europe. And we also know that England, the UK, made the choice to quit, to exit the Europe, to Brexit. And
good God, yes, the terrible decision.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. So I'm happy that you react like this, because my question is precisely what's your view on, on this situation, this decision, and what Europe represents for you,
Oh, that's a very good question. Oh, this is... Okay, I don't want to be controversial, but it is what it is. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. So, all right, my opinion of us exiting, my opinion of Brexit, first and foremost, is that it was a terrible idea. It truly breaks my heart. It really, 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 really breaks my heart. And I think, I guess children of immigrants in this country, we're not a monolith, I guess. There are probably some people who think otherwise, who think it was a great idea, and maybe they do feel very, maybe because they were born in this country, despite having immigrant parents, they do feel strongly feel strongly nationalist, but I don't feel that way. If somebody in England or another black person in the UK asked me where I was from, I would say Jamaica, even though I wasn't born there. And so... Yeah, it's sad. I didn't want it to happen. And also, when you live in London or any multicultural city, you sort of get tricked into thinking that everybody else thinks like you. So because we live in this cosmopolitan city I've grown up in, that's really diverse and lots of different cultures, and that's just what I'm used to. I was like, surely everybody knows that we can't possibly survive without being a part of it. I was just like, all of the rhetoric around, the European Union and stuff, it didn't make any sense to me, because I was like, what? So much of what we do and what makes, the UK great is propped up by, multiculturalism and immigrants and other people from Europe coming. The NHS is a great example of that. So I was really sad about that. However, my attachment to Europe, interestingly, it's really difficult because, as you know, Europe is not just generally as a place, but also I felt it as a black person traveling to other countries in Europe. They're not the nicest to black people. There is a lot of anti-black sentiment, a lot of racism, a lot of colorism. And I've been to, places, I've been to Berlin and felt uncomfortable and, experienced racism. I've had the same in France. And so actually, Europe in general, I'm kind of a bit butthurt because I'm like, you guys are not actually that nice to black people. But as a European Union, I didn't want the UK to Brexit. I really did not want Brexit to happen. It really sucks that we're doing it. I can't believe we're still doing it. I've been waiting for the second referendum. That is never coming, but I'm still hoping that one day we will get one. So yeah, I guess I have a complicated relationship with Europe, but definitely wish that we hadn't done Brexit.
Of course, and I understand your point of view. I mean, everywhere I go in Europe, I face the same. People just, reflecting on me this otherness, this idea that I don't belong. And
Exactly.
The worst is that it happens in my country of origin, in Italy. Every time people are like, wow, you speak Italian so well. How did you learn it? And I'm like, my mom is Italian and white. I'm a mixed race daughter. But, I went to Jamaica, by the way, and I love it. Yes.
Really? Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I went to Port Antonio and Kingston.
Okay.
Where are you from in Jamaica?
That's awesome. So my mum's side of the family are from this place called St. Mary.
Okay.
Castleton St. Mary, which is in the country more so. And then my dad's side of the family are from Kingston.
Amazing. It's a beautiful country, and I hope we'll be able to travel again so I can go back because people are so nice there.
Honestly, you know what's so sad is that I actually was supposed to be in Jamaica on the 6th of April for 2 weeks, and my grandma had literally been waiting for 2 years for us to visit, and 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, they locked down everything.
That's so sad.
No, I know, so I'm just waiting for us
but
to come again.
hopefully we will. Let's stay positive. And
yes.
Okay, let's end. Gina, I will end asking you one key. So an advice that you would give to women that are, looking forward to more successful achievements, but also to work on media, that dream of becoming, hosting interviews like you do, or achieve the amazing things that you did. So what's your one key for them?
Oh, I feel like, I don't know if I can give just one, bloody hell. Okay, well, to round it up perfectly, I would honestly say, again, going back to the problem solving, I think there is, or just be confident that there is a way in. Allow, those people that if you see me and you think, oh, bloody hell, I didn't know that you could do this. I didn't know that a woman of colour or a black woman could do this. Use that as an example. But honestly, find your way in. There is a way in. Don't let anyone lie. They'll lie and tell you that you can't do it. They'll lie and tell you that you can't make money from it. They'll lie and tell you that you can't be successful. But it's not true. You have to have the confidence and conviction in what you're doing. And if it doesn't work one way, being like, you know what? Okay, let me pivot and try another way. And whatever you do, make sure you have evidence. Oh my God, this is the best advice. Make sure you have evidence for what you want to do. So if you want to be somebody who ends up interviewing Netflix talent on a YouTube series, start doing interviews on a YouTube channel, or start showing evidence of that passion, because that will become very, very useful if one day you or any videos in general, if one day you decide to go into that realm of work and you say, I really want to do this. If you've got no evidence to back that up, that's a lot more difficult to sell yourself as the right person for that role than if you have a whole portfolio of videos that you thought were silly, but you decide to do them anyway, because that shows your commitment to what you want to do. So that's the advice that I would give. And don't give up. Don't give up.
Yes, and I think it's an amazing advice, because we often want to do so much and have big dreams, but we don't know how to start. And especially we think that it's not going to work. And so this prevents us to taking the first step. But taking that first step, it's so important to then show that you are capable of doing it, and also to prove it to yourself and, destroy this imposter syndrome that you have.
Definitely.
As a woman, as a black woman or a woman
Definitely.
of color. So I think it's a great advice, and I thank you. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, for sharing your stories, and I hope many women will get inspired by you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's conclude with a key. My key for today can't be other than a Netflix series, of course, to conclude this episode. The series that I advise to you is Dear White People. It's a comedy drama series, and it's based in the US. It portrays several black college students that touch on issues surrounding racism, social justice, identity, perception of black people in the US, and I think it's very relevant for many other contexts, such as also European contexts. So I really advise you to check it out and write us your feedback. This was the end of our episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. We Belong is a podcast produced by Le Cavalcade, and you can find us on all platforms and also on social media. Please follow us, share and like. Thank you. Bye!